We've shown you several ways to install Ubuntu. What we haven't really shown you so far is details on partitioning a drive and some options you have. For example, if you happen to have a operating system already, such as Windows, and you want to be able to have both Windows and Ubuntu, and maybe you've outgrown the WUBI and want to have the real Linux file system on the same drive or drive in the same machine along with your Windows. You want the best of both. Well, you're entitled to that. So in this lesson, we're going to go into some details about drive partitioning. Now I have to say, if you're a beginner, this is probably another one of those chicken or egg syndromes, where learning about partitioning a drive is usually not the first thing you do. You're trying to learn computers. So if you have a working operating system, a working Ubuntu Linux operating system at this point, so one of the other methods, then we suggest you go on with the rest of the course, and maybe you want to come back to this later. Now, if on the other hand you're a little more experienced with PCs, and maybe you already know about PC hardware, and you just want to have a real dual boot system, but you're not sure about the options as far as partitioning your drive, then this is the video you want to watch. Because in this video we're going to explore several options as far as having a Windows operating system and Ubuntu on the same drive, which will include changing the partition size on the drive. In other words, we're going to show you how to shrink the NTFS partition and make it smaller. If your drive is not full, you can do that, and then leave some drive space to make a separate partition for your Ubuntu Linux. We're going to talk about possibly having two separate drives in the same system and having it boot either on Windows or on Linux. So we're going to cover some of the more advanced techniques in this lab exercise. So let's see what we got first. Now here I happen to have a couple of hard drives that were taken out of systems, but they already have Windows on them. So I'm going to try and put one of these in an existing system, and then we're going to see if we can shrink the drive partition, and we're going to add an Ubuntu partition and an Ubuntu install, a Linux partition with an Ubuntu install. So let's see what we can do with that. Now here we have a PC open, and in the machine, this happens to be a new Dell, we have two hard drives bolted inside the machine. Now sometimes they're mounted differently, but either way, the fact is that they're inside the machine. So if you want to change your hard drive, that means you have to open the machine. Now here's another option. You can get somebody to help you, or you can get one yourself. This is made by StarTech. It's a removable drive drawer, and this drawer just slides out. This gets mounted in the machine, and then your drive drawer slides in, and your hard drive goes inside this drawer. There's another type of system. This is newer for the serial ATA drives. This is a removable drive assembly, and if I turn the key, unlock the drawer, the drive comes out like so. This happens to be an SATA, a serial ATA drive. So I could just take, if I had a drawer like this installed, I could very easily just change that drive. This is an IDE, an ATA drive. It uses a long ribbon cable to connect it. This is an SATA drive. Notice the connectors are much smaller and different. This is the ATA cable, the IDE, we call it ATA cable, which mates into the drive. Now you can see what that looks like. With IDE drives, there's a jumper on the back, because each IDE port can support up to 2 devices. So it's either master, slave, or cable select. Those are your choices. You can't have 2 that are set to master. You can't have 2 that are set to slave. Each drive has to be different. One thing you can try is to leave them both set to CS or cable select. And this is a SATA, SATA, serial ATA drive. And this is the cable that connects to that drive. So it's kind of hard to mix these up. If you open up your computer, it should be pretty easy to tell whether you have this or this. This is your older IDE ATA drive. This is the newer serial ATA drive, SATA. So as you can see, whether you have a ATA or SATA drive, if you have the luxury of a drive drawer, that opens a lot of opportunities for you to experiment with different operating systems. So with a system like that, I could have a separate drive for my Windows and just pop the drive out and pop in a different drive and have that drive be my Linux Ubuntu. That's one possibility. The other possibility would be to have two drives installed in the machine and have Linux be installed on one and have your Windows installed on the other. And a third possibility is to just have one drive, have it to be partitioned, so the Windows is in one partition and the Linux Ubuntu is in another partition. The decision you ultimately make, I'm sure, will have something to do with how much money you have to spend on this. So let's look at the least expensive way first. Behind me here, we have a donor Windows XP system set up that we're going to use to demonstrate how to install Ubuntu along with Windows XP on a shared partition. This is a 160 gig drive and it's all one NTFS partition. So as part of this demonstration, we're going to shrink the NTFS partition to make room for the Ubuntu partition. Here we have a wonderful Windows XP system that we're going to now install Ubuntu in a different partition on the same single hard drive. We'll put our Ubuntu CD, DVD in the drive. Now here we see when we first put the CD in, we have a pop-up which gives us some instructions of what our options are. The first option is to demo in full installation, basically telling us to reboot the machine with the CD in the tray, which is what we're actually going to do. The second option, install inside Windows, is the WUBI install that we showed you earlier. So if you have a DVD, you can also do a WUBI install from the Ubuntu DVD as well. And there's also a third button, Learn More, to take you to the Ubuntu website. So let's do a reboot. Turn off computer, restart, and we're on our way to a new experience. Now we've seen several versions of Ubuntu installation, so we're not going to focus on the installation so much as in this case we're going to focus on our options as far as the disk partitioning. We go into a lot of detail about installing several different flavors of Linux throughout the many labs in this chapter. This particular lab is really all about our options as far as how to use hard drive partitioning and installing Ubuntu. We've seen this before. We're going to select our language and select Install Ubuntu. And these are the same parameters we want to be set as we showed in previous demos. Now at this point, the operating system install application is analyzing our hard drive and it should be coming up with what our options are for hard drive usage. And here we go. We have three basic choices here. Install alongside other operating system. That's what we're going to do. Erase and use the entire disk is not what we're going to do in this demo. We showed that in the previous lab exercises, In this case, we want to keep our precious Windows and have Ubuntu Linux as well. The third option, specify partitions manually, is advanced. We will cover that in the next lab exercise. But now we're going to do an install alongside other operating systems. So we simply click forward, and there we go. There's our drive. Now it's a 160 gig drive, and what Ubuntu is offering to do is to split that drive in half. It's going to shrink the NTFS partition for us and pretty much divide it evenly between Windows and Ubuntu. Now you can decide how even you want that to be by clicking over here and dragging, and it will only let us drag so far. It will get down to a certain point and it stops because that's the space needed by Windows. So we can do a 50-50, a 60-40%, whatever you want to do, okay? I'm going to leave like 50 gig for Windows because I'm really seriously going to move into Ubuntu. So I'm just leaving 50 gig for Windows and taking a little more than 100 gig for my Ubuntu. Again, you can select whatever size you want. And again, use entire partition or use entire disk. We can override this. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave this just like that. We're going to click Install Now. And we're being warned before you can select a new partition, any previous change will be written. What that means is we are updating the disk partition. We will click Continue. The actual disk is being rewritten now. The partition table is being changed in the disk. We are now going to have a roughly 50 gig Windows partition and a almost 110 gig Ubuntu partition. The rest of the install is exactly as we have seen it. So we're not going to describe this, we're going to just go right through it and we'll see what happens at the end. And through the wonders and miracles of television, we have a time lapse. Our installation is completed, so let's restart and see what happens. As the drive restart, the drive drawer pops open. We remove the installation media CD, and we press the Enter key to continue. Our system is now rebooting. And we should see the effects of the Grub bootloader coming up here shortly. Here we see now we have a choice of Linux or Windows. Let's look at our Linux quickly and see what we have here. This, by the way, is version 10.10, just slightly newer than the LTS version 10.4. As far as the installation goes, it's pretty much identical. Here's our login. Here's our little welcome bongos. Here's our GNOME desktop. Pretty much standard GNOME desktop with our 3 menus. It looks like we have a Ubuntu system running. Now, let's try a reboot and make sure our Windows is still okay. Here's our boot manager. We're going to use the arrow keys to go down to Microsoft Windows. If you didn't do anything, just left it alone, it will automatically boot in Ubuntu. Now we're going to start our Windows. Our Windows will probably want to run chkdsk because it's going to go, oh my god, what happened to the disk partition? It was bigger before. I'd better check it, which is a good thing. Yes, this is not to be worried about something like this. We did change the partition size, so let Windows do its thing here with its chkdsk. This is a good idea. It shouldn't take too long. we did resize the Windows partition, so Windows is doing the necessary homework that it should to verify the file system integrity. It only takes that little bit of time, so no reason to panic for that. It will come up and it will restart again. So we will have to select Windows again when our boot manager comes up. The people often worry and comment about drivers. I have to let you know that this is a fresh Windows install, and a lot of the drivers did not work with this new system with this Windows CD. However, with our Linux install, it found most of the hardware and the drivers for it automatically. So, just a point of comparison here. And again, Windows looks like it found some new drivers. We'll let it restart the computer. This is your typical Windows stuff. The point is, Windows does run fine. So as you can see, we have now succeeded in creating a dual boot system with Linux, Ubuntu, and Windows. And you can select at boot up time which one you want to run. The next piece we want to show you here is how you can access your Windows files from the Ubuntu installation on the same hard drive. This is pretty cool and worth taking a note of. Now, one thing that's really cool, that I like the way this works, we now have our two partitions, Ubuntu and Windows, and you may notice if you look in your places, you have a 51 gig file system. That is your Windows file system. Then if you want to be, where are my documents is a common question. Well, we go to Documents and Settings, your username which was there, My Documents, and there's some of my Windows documents. Now this happens to be a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Let's see if our Open Office will open this for us. We'll simply double click that. Here's our Open Office that comes with Ubuntu. And there is our Microsoft spreadsheet, which opened just hunky-dory in the Open Office. So we can access our previous existing Windows files with no problem whatsoever. I'm going to open up, this is a Word document. And there is the Word document opened up again in the Open Office Writer. So you can save this to your home folder in Ubuntu. Now, as far as using Ubuntu, there's more of that covered in this course. We want you to see that once you do install this way, you can get at all of your files that are on your Windows partition from Ubuntu, which is pretty cool. So you can see through this video demo that even though partitioning your hard drive is an advanced topic, if you're new to this and follow the instructions, chances are you'll be fairly successful. And in the background you can see I have two of my Microsoft Office documents open using the Open Office that comes with Ubuntu. So I'm even able to access the Windows file system from the Ubuntu operating system to get at my previous files that I had created using Microsoft Windows. That's a pretty easy transition to me. So, now if you want to, you can follow detailed instructions in this lab below where we describe what we just did as a reference for you to try this on your own workstation.